r/AskReddit. What did your parents/family do that you later realized was insane? When my mother left my dad, she pitched a tent in my walk-in closet. I was 7 or 8, and she lived in my fucking closet for months before she got her own place. I still remember her reading her Joyce Meyer books by lamplight. That's actually kinda sad. It is. She couldn't stand to sleep in the same bed with him, but couldn't afford to leave, so she'd rather live in a closet. Damn. I don't have very many memories of my childhood, or really anything in the last 25 years. But I do remember, when we would go in timeout, we had to bend our knees and fold our arms behind our backs while staring at the wall. We had to stand motionless and silent for 30 minutes. If we moved or swayed, we got another 30 minutes. This would go on for hours sometimes. My brothers and I would pull muscles and pass out sometimes. Also, while we were in the shower, our parents would search our rooms. They did this every day, and if they found anything they didn't, like, they'd make us jump out of the shower, still dripping wet and naked, and come clean up, or explain whatever they found. And we were always grounded, but they would never tell us why. So, since we were already grounded, they would just take away our birthdays, or do timeout for punishment. I have only celebrated my birthday twice in my life, and both times my mom shut it down within 10 minutes. TLDR, leg day, all day. I can do squats for hours. Edit, holy shit, this blew up. I will update when I get off work in about an hour. Edit #2. I thought this would just get buried. I have plenty of other stories, but there's no need to get into all of that. To those that don't believe, that's fine. I don't need you to believe me. I know what I went through, and I don't need to prove it to anyone. To answer many questions in the comments. My birthday is March 30th. I'm a 25-year-old woman. I live in Omaha, Northeast, in the United States with my boyfriend and 6 cats. Not with my parents. They kicked me out a week before my 18th birthday. My family is mixed race, but predominantly white. She claims to be Wiccan and Christian at the same time. My father is Mormon, kind of. He's a meth-addicted, schizophrenic vagrant that used to be Mormon. The values I was brought up under are mostly Mormon. My parents divorced and both remarried. My parents have both admitted that they should never have had children, and myself and siblings all agree. My mother is a narcissist who always needs to be the center of attention. She managed to make my grandfather's death all about her, and I just found out my grandmother is going into hospice care this weekend. My mother never even once mentioned that she was sick. She's her power. I have been able to cope with everything by disassociating and repressing. Also, I just joke about the shit that happens to me. It really helps me work through it. I'll say something that was traumatic with a huge smile on my face, and then just do finger guns and walk away. It's really cathartic. I have one coworker whom I think gets it, and he just does it right back like it's NBD. He jokes that I must be cursed, and that my life is the perfect example of Murphy's Law. I have new memories pop up all the time. Sometimes random things bring them up. This morning I actually had one pop up. I smelled Dial Gold hand soap. I've always hated the smell of it. It makes me gag. A memory popped into my head of being held down and having it pumped into my mouth. Another one of my mom's genius punishments. I ended up puking and then was punished for that with a bend knee timeout. I think I'm okay. I don't really know. I've always had a lot of anxiety, yet I'm essentially devoid of emotion. I guess I'm 97% okay and 3% very not okay. I dunno. Thank you, kind internet strangers. I feel very loved. Edit 3. Forgot the most important detail. Yeah, the squats did do some magic. I never used to think anything of it, but I do get a lot of comments. A friend told me that I'm her squat motivation. I have a 24-inch waist with 40 inches at the hips. Holy crap, I thought I was the only one that had punishments like this. Hours in the corner. We had to hold encyclopedias or dumbbells over our head, and if our arms bent, more time in the corner. I remember being stuck in the corner once for the entire length of a movie, Pet Sematary to be exact. My biggest fear has been doing the same to my own children, but so far it seems like raising kids can be done without these punishments. This isn't punishment. This is abuse. It's literally a form of torture, called stress positions. They kept everything. Everything. The moment I walked into my friend's house and realized you're not supposed to have stuff lining the walls was ridiculous. This is why I have to smoke when I go to visit my parents. It's my mom who's the hoarder, but I think dad gave up on her a long time ago and realized it was just easier to let her live in her fantasy while she destroyed the house. I love them both dearly, but I enter that building and I want to scream. It makes me viscerally, absurdly, uncomfortably angry. It's so hard, because intellectually I know it's a mental illness. It's not something she can help or acknowledge, is an issue or even see, really, the same way folks outside her head can. But JFC. There's this really good book called Stuff, Compulsive Hoarding and the Meaning of Things, which at least helped me understand her better, but I honestly don't know if I'll ever reach a point where I can forgive her for it. Which is pretty fucked up, I guess, given that I know it's an addictive process born out of emotional trauma. Still, though, I also have a horrible reaction to even the memory of my mother's hoarding and having to clean it all when she passed away. Now sometimes one of my friends will be like, I've got these old clothes / books / whatever, do you? And I scream no and run the hell the other way. My mom once blew out the pilot lights on our gas stove, cranked up the gas, and told 7Y/O me and my 14Y/O sister to go to sleep. I went to bed, not knowing any better. Luckily, my sister dragged me out of the house, and we sat in the car. Mom finally changed her mind, sobered up a bit, aired out the house, relit the pilots, and took us back inside. That was fun. My mom was always very invested in our romantic lives, partly because that was an area where we didn't stack up well as compared to our cousins. The most insane manifestation of this was when I agreed to go out on a date with a guy, only to find out before the date that he was a sexual predator who'd been fired/arrested after he preyed on 4 separate freshmen at the school where he taught. Mom flipped out trying to convince me not to cancel the date. He might have grown out of it. You don't know if you don't give him a chance. Thankfully, my dad was on my side and I cancelled the date. But mom sulked the entire rest of the night and demanded I log her into my Facebook account so she could scroll through my friends list so that she could see which of my male friends were straight and single so that she could push me towards them instead. Your mother is scary. No restrictions on food or drinks. From the time I was 4 or 5 I was drinking around 5 cans of Dr. Pepper a day. My parents never told me I needed to drink water and real juice was never in the house. Juice when I was little was Hawaiian punch or the 5% juice Minute Maid fruit punch. Lunches during the summer was a continuous cycle of pizza rolls, SpaghettiOs and McDonald's. Breakfast was either chocolate Pop-Tarts or Fruity Pebbles cereal. I don't think junk food now and then is too much, but I don't think I had a single day in my childhood where I wasn't given sweets, fatty snacks and caffeine. The funny thing is, as a kid I used to think it was my friends' parents who were the odd, mean ones for only letting their kids have things like sodas on rare occasions. Looking back I speculate that along with just being lazy parenting, it was also probably my parents' way of trying to make me happy and make up for the lack of time spent with me by buying me whatever junk food I wanted. My brother while raising his boys would buy like 10 gallons of milk at a time when it was on sale and then put it in the deep freezer. It never tasted like milk after it thawed. He claimed to not have noticed a difference. Oh, there's a difference, alright. Edit. I had no idea that this gross taste would be eliminated, or rectified I guess, by shaking the milk. Man, I bet my nephews wish they would have known that, lol. It's because the fat/protein of the milk is separated when frozen, since only the water really freezes. It's a really shit explanation, but basically it's kinda like how butter's made. The frozen milk would have a bit of yellow to it, and taste a bit like it too. Fun fact, frozen breast milk begins to develop a chalky taste after being frozen because of lipase. That's not a fun fact at all. We lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, at least 35 minutes to the nearest grocery store. I'm not sure how it started, because I was a kid, but anytime our puppy dog howled, we would all howl. To the point that it was a deafening sound and would kind of make your ears rattle. His name was Duke. I would occasionally howl first, because then he would follow, and then so would my mother, father, and 2 older brothers. I thought it was awesome, and it felt invigorating to do. I now realize this is odd. That dog probably had the time of his life, though. Dogs do howl to bond with pack members, so I bet said dog enjoyed it. My parents visited underground Atlanta back in the early 90s. Not the safest place. Anyways, my brother was a baby and crawled under a bench they were sitting on. He pulled out an umbrella bag with a very sinister knife inside. My parents don't report the knife or anything, but instead keep it, and it becomes a staple knife in our kitchen. So yay, pretty sure my parents used a murder weapon to cut the crust off our PB&Js. I go to Georgia State and am right by this area every single day lol. This story is so absurd, but I can imagine this scenario completely. My godbrother's parents used to lock us in his room for hours to days at a time. His little brothers learned to pee in the trash can instead of in the floor when we couldn't get them out. We eventually learned how to unlock and relock the hatch from inside the room so that the 4 of us could get out for pee breaks and for snacks when we were feeling really bowsy. I didn't realize how abnormal this was until I was watching a news story in the work break room with a bunch of coworkers about a neglected child being removed from an unfit home. My initial response was that's nothing. As I launched into what I just wrote above, I looked around waiting for everyone else's stories, but instead they all just stared at me. Edit. Quite a few people have been very kind and offered sound advice to me. Therapy is definitely worth its weight in gold. Edit 2. People keep asking, godbrother is the son of one of your godparent, or so I was taught when I was growing up. Okay, this is weird on a whole different level. How old were you, and how long did it last? Would they leave the house, or were you literally just locked away while they went about doing daily things? So as I began to write answers to your more in-depth questions, I actually realized it's making me get a bit more upset than just talking about it vaguely. So, I'm not gonna get too in-depth. They were home at least some of the time, that's why we were afraid to leave the room and be caught. It lasted until after I was 12, so maybe it lasted about 7 to 8 years. My whole memory of being at that house has it throughout. I just thought it was normal. Strict for sure, but I thought it was the strict range of normal. Didn't even tell my mom about it, because I didn't think it was that crazy. My brother and I would be locked in our room for hours at a time, and told to be absolutely silent. Went on for a few years. One morning I woke up super early, earlier than normal, and was hungry. So I went to ask my mom for oatmeal. I opened the bedroom door, and my mom is rubbing the back of a shirtless, sleeping man who is not my dad. Mom panics, jumps out of bed, and gently pushes me out of the room. I kinda stand in the kitchen confused when my dad comes in from another part of the house and asks WTF I'm doing and sends me back to my room. They finally divorced a couple years ago, and my mom confided that my dad made her prostitute herself to pay the bills for a while when we were kids. A lot of memories made sense after that. I have a brother with disabilities. He's relatively low functioning and requires regular attention, both inside the home and out. I love him to death, but it made for a pretty untraditional childhood. I didn't realize until my late teenage years that other families were happy and relaxed, which isn't to say that they didn't have their problems, just that they weren't constantly preoccupied by one family member who requires more care and attention than others at all times. To be clear, my brother is a wonderful person. I cherish every moment that I get to spend with him now. But, at the same time, I spent a disproportionate amount of my childhood in waiting rooms while he went to various therapies. And I spent very little time with my parents growing up because all of their attention was focused on my brother. I was an afterthought because I was lucky enough to be an afterthought and still function. My alcoholic bipolar father would drop me and my 2 siblings off at the grocery store with his credit card and told us to go grocery shopping. We were young kids when this started. He'd either go hit up a bar or wait in the parking lot before coming back to get us. Sometimes it would be a long wait. Looking back, I still don't know how we were able to run his credit card and no one ever batted an eye. We had to cook too, so it wasn't exactly healthy stuff. A lot of times the food would all be gone a week or so before he'd take us back to the store. We had to get really creative. We'd joke that there was nothing left but the goo in the back of the refrigerator. Honestly surprised we didn't develop diabetes, although I'm hypoglycemic, or obesity or anything serious. We quickly learned not to buy a bunch of candy or sweets, something that kind of impressed me looking back. I learned to keep an emergency stash of food hidden in my room. One of many insane things, but first that came to mind. Kinda relevant, but I'm still gonna post this. When I was in 6th grade, I think, my mom decided we needed to understand what it was like for people in third world countries. We ate oatmeal for breakfast, beans and rice for lunch, could have one fruit for a snack, and beans and rice plus some romaine lettuce for dinner. All of this for a month, and we were only allowed 3 cheat meals. In high school, looking back, I just thought she was batshit nuts. But once I started having bills and such of my own, it occurred to me my parents were just that broke. They just didn't want us to think of it that way. Damn, do I love those 2 people. My godmother, who took care of me a lot, would make pancakes a lot. As kids, we were really excited because pancakes were the bomb. But I later found out that pancakes are incredibly cheap and filling, and that's why she made them. Not complaining. I think it was sweet she found something we liked that was cheap. On the day my dad decided to buy our family's first PC, he loaded me and my younger sisters into the back of our little 2-door Honda and drove the 20 minutes to the store. After purchasing the computer, my dad realized there wasn't enough room in our tiny car for 3 children, car seats, and the giant ass 1997 computer. So he left us at the store, apparently thinking that if he bought us all candy bars, that'd be enough to keep a 5, 3, and 2-year-old occupied and out of trouble. He took the new computer home and then turned around to come back and get us, having left us alone for easily 40 minutes. Edit. This was our car, pretty tiny. Also, my mom found out about all of this a year ago when my dad casually told the story over dinner. Why wouldn't he just take you guys first and come back and get the computer? It's the same amount of trips. My dad once took 3 of us kids out for a ride in the Pine Barrens. He drove us 20 minutes into the woods on a sandy trail in a minivan. He had just gotten into a fight with my stepmother and needed a drive to burn off all the alcohol in his system. He didn't say much during the ride. We got stuck, obviously because we were in a 2WD caravan, but luckily some 4WD truck dude came through and winched us out. When that guy showed up, dad wasn't quiet anymore and we left the woods when we were unstuck and went home. I'm not sure what his intentions were that day, but the look on my stepmother's face when we returned made me rethink whether it was a fun ride in the woods or a fuck this life moment worthy of the nightly news narrowly averted. Edit. Thank you for my first silvers. To answer a few questions, my father's been dead for 7 years, so we don't talk much anymore. It wasn't unusual for him to go out for a ride after a drunk fight, but it was the only time he took some of his kids with him. I'm guessing that's what had my stepmother so upset. As a young kid with a drunk for a dad, I never really thought about him purposely killing us. He was an angry drunk, but mostly verbal abuse. At that point I had never been off-roading in the woods, so I was more focused on the scenery than the purpose or possible outcome of the ride. Like a lot of things from childhood, I didn't realize some of the severities of the situation until I was much older. He needed a drive to burn off all the alcohol on his system. Pretty sure that's not how that works. My mom is very controlling. She would make me turn my diary over to make sure I wasn't writing anything she didn't approve of. So I saved up enough money by skipping school lunch and bought a secret diary at the book fair. I came home to her sitting on my bed and yelled at me for writing "Mom is a jerk" or something like that. She would have grounded me, but I wasn't allowed out of the house without her escorting me until age 16. She then wondered why I had no friends. I was allowed only 30 minutes on the computer in the computer room, and I would have to record which websites I went on and what usernames and passwords I used. She would use the password book to go on the websites and look at who I was talking to. I also just kind of accepted that it was normal for parents to charge rent when you turned 18 and only allow you to eat one meal a day, dinner, and have to pay for the others yourself. Edit. The rent thing doesn't bother me as much. It started out at $500 a month and went up every year, so now I'm at $700 a month. That's pretty normal rent around where I live, and I don't have to pay for heat/electricity/internet. I'm trying to move out, but I also have to pay for college out of pocket, and it adds up. Are we sisters? Fend for yourself night. When I was like 5 and on, we'd have to find our own food that night. I later found out my parents were too lazy to cook for my sister and I, who were just 5 and 8. I used to come up with really weird food combinations, most notably Nutella or peanut butter plus candy sprinkles wrapped up in a tortilla. As I got older, I began toasting it and rolling it in cinnamon sugar. Edit. Wow. People are either going same dude or Jesus Christ, how could a parent do something like this to a 5-year-old? I feel a little better knowing there's so many of us. Edit. To clarify, this happening once a week or something isn't an issue. With me it gradually went from like twice a week to every other day. Eventually growing up my parents just stopped cooking, and if they did it was suddenly a huge deal. Like they'd cook once a week at best. Really chaotic stuff. I became the best improv chef ever, so I'm thankful. But at the same time, Jesus Christ, my sister became a pre-diabetic at 12 over the lack of nutrition. We didn't know any better, unfortunately. That was pretty normal in my house, but mostly because our schedules were so wildly different and we all got hungry at different times. Though eventually I got tired of it and started forcing us to eat at a more standard time because I was sick of having pizza rolls or hot pockets for dinner. One of the winter chores was to clear old trees in an area that eventually became fields. Imagine being hoisted up to a knot on top of a tree, 30 feet in the air on the front end loader of a tractor, so you could dump in a mixture of oil and gas, and chucking matching in the hole. The explosion being enough to rock the loader back and forth. My father ran the tractor while I firebombed the tree. When those trees did come down, we'd haul them with the tractor. While chained up, I would ride the outer branches to where we're hauling these old growth cottonwood trees that were massive and sometimes tipped. More than once I got caught up under these trees as they rolled, but luckily never got more than a few scrapes. I'm 42 and now I want to firebomb trees. I could probably charge people for the experience. Sometimes we'd do it for fun. One year some friends picked out a tree in an area my father wanted cleared and spent 3 days getting it ready. We chopped and hauled about 9 other trees in a ring around it. Then we made a witch out of old clothes and fill it with fireworks. Then we nailed a plastic bucket with about 5 gallons of gas over the witch's head. We threw gas and oil all over the pile and lit it. When the plastic bucket finally melted, it was like seeing a napalm bomb get dropped. The neighbors had learned to not call the cops by this point. This was our New Year's party that year. However, when it's a chore, the temperature is -20, and building a fire is the only way to keep warm. Burning trees is a lot less fun. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. I would be so grateful if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. New videos every day.